The sleek alien scout ship, Whisper of Stars, drifted silently through the darkness of space, its sensors scanning the small blue planet below. Captain Veltar stretched his forearms and yawned. Another boring day of routine patrol duty in the GI. Outer Rim territories. His species, the Zephyrians, had been exploring space for thousands of years, and primitive worlds like this one were nothing new. Just another backwater planet, Veltar muttered to himself, watching the swirling white clouds cover the continents. The electromagnetic signals coming from the surface were weak and chaotic, typical of species that had barely discovered electricity. He was about to mark the planet as pre-contact civilization and move on when Dr. Hyun, the ship's xenobiologist, burst into the command center. "Captain, you need to hear this," Dr. Hyun said, his voice tight with concern. He had been monitoring the planet's communications for the past few hours, and what he discovered made his blood run cold. Veltar rolled his eyes. "What now, Doctor? Did they invent the wheel?" Dr. Hyun activated the translation matrix, and suddenly, the command center filled with voices speaking in dozens of different languages. But as the computer worked its magic, the words became clear. On a news broadcast from a place called Seoul, a scientist named Kim Tae was discussing something called atomic energy research. In another transmission from Tokyo, an engineer named Yuki Sato was explaining the basics of fusion reactor technology to a group of students. Captain Veltar's casual attitude vanished instantly. His four eyes widened as he listened to more intercepted conversations. Humans were talking about splitting atoms like it was everyday conversation. They discussed nuclear power plants, hydrogen bombs, and even theoretical stellar engineering projects. These weren't the primitive babbling of cave dwellers. These creatures understood the fundamental forces of the universe. "By the 7 moons," Veltar whispered, "they're talking about nuclear fission like we discuss cooking dinner." Dr. Hyun nodded grimly. "And look at this." He pulled up more data on his screen. "They've already detonated nuclear weapons on their own planet, multiple times. They call it testing. Captain, this species has weaponized atomic energy while they're still using chemical rockets to barely reach their own moon." The implications hit Veltar like a meteor. According to Imperial Standard Protocol 7, any species that achieved nuclear capability without galactic oversight represented a Class Alpha threat. History had taught the Empire harsh lessons about allowing primitive species to develop advanced weapons independently. The last time they ignored such a species, it took 300 years and the destruction of 12 star systems to bring them under control. "Send an immediate report to High Command," Veltar ordered, his voice now deadly serious. "Mark this system for immediate Imperial intervention. These humans have crossed the line." As the Whisper of Stars prepared to leave Earth's solar system, neither Veltar nor Dr. Hyun realized they had just set in motion events that would shake the very foundations of the Galactic Empire. The humans below continued their daily lives, unaware that their casual mastery of atomic fire had just painted a target on their entire species. The massive Imperial dreadnought Divine Judgment materialized in Earth's orbit like a steel mountain blocking out the sun. The ship stretched over 10 kilometers from bow to stern, its dark hull bristling with weapon arrays that could glass entire continents. Admiral Kethamore stood on the bridge, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he gazed down at the small, blue world below. In his 3 centuries of service, Kethamore had overseen the subjugation of 47 different species. The process was always the same: appear with overwhelming force, deliver the ultimatum, and watch as the primitives fell to their knees in terror. Most species surrendered within hours of seeing an Imperial dreadnought. The smart ones begged for mercy. "Begin the broadcast," Kethamore commanded, settling into his command throne. His communications officer activated the planet-wide transmission array, sending the message in every human language their computers had decoded. "Attention, primitive species of the 3rd planet," Kethamore's voice boomed across every radio, television, and communication device on Earth. "I am High Admiral Kethamore of the Galactic Empire. Your species has violated Imperial law by developing nuclear weapons without proper oversight. You have 72 standard hours to surrender unconditionally to Imperial rule or face complete annihilation. Comply, and you will be granted the privilege of serving the Empire. Resist, and your world will be cleansed of all life. Kethmore leaned back, expecting the usual flood of panicked surrender messages. Instead, his communication systems remained eerily quiet for nearly an hour. Then, something unprecedented happened. President Park Soo of Korea was the first to respond, speaking directly to the alien ship hovering above his nation. His voice was calm, steady, and carried no trace of fear. "We have received your message, Admiral. Here is our response." He paused for just a moment, then delivered 3 simple words: "Come and take it." Within minutes, the same message began broadcasting from every corner of Earth. Prime Minister Hana from Japan repeated the phrase in perfect Japanese. The President of Brazil said it in Portuguese. The Chancellor of Germany delivered it in German. Leaders from nearly 200 nations, speaking in hundreds of different languages, all gave the exact same response. Admiral Kethmore stared at his communication displays in complete bewilderment. "This is impossible," he muttered. "They can't all be saying the same thing." But they were. From the smallest island nations to the largest continental powers, humanity spoke with one unified voice. Even more disturbing to the Admiral, civilian broadcasts were picking up the phrase. Ordinary humans, teachers, farmers, factory workers, students, were repeating those 3 words on every communication channel. "Sir," his communications officer reported nervously, "we're detecting over 7 billion individual sources repeating the same message. It's not just their governments, it's their entire species." Kethmore had never encountered anything like this in his long career. Most species fractured under pressure, with different factions trying to negotiate separate deals. But these humans seemed to have instantly united against a common threat. "Prepare the punishment fleet," Kethmore ordered grimly. "If they want to choose extinction over slavery, we'll give them exactly what they're asking for." Admiral Kethmore watched from his command deck as 30 Imperial warships descended toward Earth's major population centers. New York, London, Tokyo, Seoul. Each city would serve as an example of what happened when primitives defied the Empire. The plan was simple: obliterate a few million humans with precision strikes, and the rest would surrender within hours. "This will be over quickly," Kethmore told his bridge crew. "No species has ever withstood even a single Imperial bombardment." The first wave of energy beams lanced down from orbit, designed to vaporize entire city blocks. But something unexpected happened. The humans didn't just cower in their shelters, they fought back. Captain Lee Min of the Korean Defense Force watched the alien ships position themselves above Seoul. He had maybe 15 minutes before those energy weapons recharged. For a second volley, his nuclear missile battery was decades old, primitive by any standard. But it was all he had. "Fire everything," Lee Min ordered. "Aim for the biggest ship." Ancient nuclear warheads, originally designed to fight other humans, streaked upward through Earth's atmosphere. The Imperial crew barely noticed them. Their energy shields could deflect asteroid impacts, what was a handful of primitive atomic weapons. But Lee Min had done something no galactic tactician expected. Instead of targeting the ship's hull, he aimed his missiles at the exact point where the energy beam had fired. For a split second, when an Imperial ship discharged its main weapon, a tiny gap appeared in the shield matrix to allow the beam through. The nuclear warheads detonated right at that vulnerable point. The first Imperial warship's shields flickered, then collapsed entirely. The second and third explosions tore through unprotected hull plating, and suddenly the mighty vessel was spinning out of control, atmosphere bleeding from a dozen hull breaches. Meanwhile, over the Pacific Ocean, Commander Yeon Ah led a squadron of modified fighter jets against another Imperial ship. Her planes were antiques, chemical rockets and metal bullets against energy shields and plasma cannons. Any sane military would have called it suicide. But Yeon Ah had been watching the alien ships carefully. She noticed something the Imperial crews missed. Their shields had to drop for microseconds every time they launched their own fighters. During those brief moments, the big ships were completely vulnerable. "Follow my lead," Yeon Ah radioed to her squadron. "Wait for the shields to drop, then punch through." Ancient nuclear warheads, originally designed to fight other humans, streaked upward through Earth's atmosphere. The Imperial crew barely noticed them. Their energy shields could deflect asteroid impacts. What was a handful of primitive atomic weapons? But Li Min had done something no galactic tactician expected. Instead of targeting the ship's hull, he aimed his missiles at the exact point where the energy beam had fired. For a split second, when an Imperial ship discharged its main weapon, a tiny gap appeared in the shield matrix to allow the beam through. The nuclear warheads detonated right at that vulnerable point. The first Imperial warship's shields flickered, then collapsed entirely. The second and third explosions tore through unprotected hull plating, and suddenly the mighty vessel was spinning out of control, atmosphere bleeding from a dozen hull breaches. Meanwhile, over the Pacific Ocean, Commander Yon-Ah led a squadron of modified fighter jets against another Imperial ship. Her planes were antiques, chemical rockets and metal bullets against energy shields and plasma cannons. Any sane military would have called it suicide, but Yon-Ah had been watching the alien ships carefully. She noticed something the Imperial crews missed. Their shields had to drop for microseconds every time they launched their own fighters. During those brief moments, the big ships were completely vulnerable. "Follow my lead," Yon-Ah radioed to her squadron. "Wait for the shields to drop, then punch through." Her fighters dove at the Imperial vessel like angry hornets. The aliens laughed at first. What could primitive aircraft do? Then Yon-Ah's plane slipped through the shield gap during a fighter launch sequence, and her payload of conventional explosives detonated against the ship's main reactor. The Imperial warship didn't just lose power, it exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up half the Pacific. Within 3 hours, 3 Imperial ships were either destroyed or crippled. Admiral Keithmore stared at his tactical displays in shock. This wasn't supposed to happen. Primitive species were supposed to be helpless against Imperial technology. "How?" he whispered. "How did they find weaknesses that took our best engineers? Centuries to discover?" His tactical officer's voice shook as he reported the casualties. "Sir, we're requesting immediate reinforcements. These humans, they fight like they've been studying our ships for decades." For the first time in his career, Admiral Keithmore felt genuine fear. The footage spread across the galaxy faster than Imperial sensors could stop it. Grainy videos of burning Imperial warships, recorded by human satellites and alien spy drones, appeared on communication networks throughout known space. For the first time in over 1,000 years, subject species watched Imperial vessels exploding in brilliant fireballs above an unconquered world. On the mining world of Keth Prime, a Felthari worker named Zixtal paused his drilling operation to watch the forbidden broadcasts. The images showed a massive Imperial dreadnought spinning helplessly through space, its armor cracked open like an egg. Below it, tiny human fighters buzzed around the dying ship, like insects bringing down a giant. "Impossible," Zixtal whispered. But his 3 hearts were beating faster than they had in decades. The Empire had conquered his people 2 centuries ago, and since then, no one had dared to resist. Now these humans had done what every slave species thought was unthinkable. They had made the Empire bleed. Similar scenes played out across 17 different worlds. In crystal cities and underwater colonies, in space stations and asteroid mines, enslaved aliens watched the same incredible footage. The Empire's propaganda machines worked overtime, claiming the videos were fake, but everyone could see the truth. Those burning ships were real. Meanwhile, in Earth's solar system, the real work of survival had begun. When the Imperial attack devastated Earth's major cities, millions of humans died. But those who survived refused to give up. Engineer Jun Ho had been working at a Mars research station when the aliens arrived. Now he found himself leading a desperate salvage operation among the wreckage of destroyed Imperial ships. "Look at this," Jun Ho said to his team as they explored the remains of a crashed alien fighter. The ship's energy weapons were melted slag, but its power core was still intact. "Their technology isn't magic. It's just engineering we haven't seen before." Working in pressurized suits among the twisted metal, Jun Ho's team carefully extracted alien components. Every piece of Imperial technology was like a puzzle waiting to be solved. The power cores used exotic matter, but the basic principles were similar to human fusion reactors. The energy weapons were advanced, but they still followed the laws of physics. Pilot Yoon had escaped Earth's destruction in a stolen transport ship, fleeing to the outer planets with whatever survivors she could rescue. Now she worked with June, Ho's team, testing hybrid weapons that combined human engineering with alien technology. We took their shield generator and connected it to our nuclear reactor, Yoon explained during a test flight. It shouldn't work, but somehow it does. The shields are actually stronger than the original Imperial design. The key to human success wasn't just copying alien technology, it was improving it. Where Imperial engineers had spent centuries perfecting standard designs, humans approached each component with fresh eyes. They welded human steel to alien alloys, powered Imperial weapons with modified fusion reactors, and enhanced alien computers with human software. Each breakthrough made the human resistance more dangerous. Junho's workshops produced weapons that outperformed pure Imperial technology, while Yoon's pilots tested new tactics that exploited weaknesses no galactic species had ever discovered. The scattered survivors weren't just fighting for revenge. They were evolving into something the Empire had never faced before. Dr. So Young stared at the impossible weapon lying on her makeshift workbench. 6 months ago, she had been a materials scientist at Seoul National University, working on advanced steel alloys for construction projects. Now she was humanity's leading expert on alien technology, working in a hidden laboratory carved into an asteroid between Mars and Jupiter. The weapon in front of her looked like nothing any engineer had ever designed. The barrel was pure Imperial plasma technology, but the power core was a modified human fusion reactor. The trigger mechanism came from a destroyed alien fighter, but the targeting system was enhanced with human computer code. It shouldn't have worked at all. The technologies were completely incompatible. Test fire in 3 seconds, So Young announced to her team, all of them taking cover behind blast shields. The hybrid weapon hummed to life, energy crackling along its length. When she pulled the trigger, a bolt of superheated plasma streaked across the testing chamber and punched through 6 inches of Imperial armor plating. "Incredible," whispered her assistant, Dr. Kim Yoon. "It's 30% more powerful than the original Imperial design." This was happening in secret workshops throughout the solar system. Human engineers weren't just copying alien technology, they were making it better. They took Imperial energy shields and reinforced them with human titanium mesh. They enhanced alien computers with human artificial intelligence. Every piece of captured technology became the foundation for something entirely new. Captain Min Seo commanded one of the most feared human raider squadrons, operating from a hidden base in the asteroid belt. Her ships were walking contradictions, sleek, alien hulls powered by human fusion reactors, Imperial weapons enhanced with human targeting systems, and armor that combined both technologies into something stronger than either could achieve alone. "Remember," Min Seo told her pilots before their latest mission, "we're not just fighting to survive anymore. We're fighting to learn." Her squadron struck at an Imperial supply convoy, but this wasn't a desperate kamikaze attack like the early days of the war. These were precision strikes designed to capture specific technologies and test new weapons in actual combat. When Imperial fighters tried to intercept them, Min Seo's pilots used tactics that had been impossible just weeks before. The human ships moved in patterns that confused Imperial targeting computers. They used their hybrid weapons to exploit weaknesses that pure Imperial technology couldn't detect. Most importantly, they recorded everything, analyzing every second of combat data to improve their next attack. After each battle, the human survivors gathered to share what they had learned. A pilot named Jae-hoon discovered that Imperial shields weakened when exposed to specific radio frequencies. Engineer Hee-jin found that alien armor cracked along predictable stress points when hit with modified human explosives. Commander Bo Ram learned that Imperial tactical computers couldn't adapt to human unpredictability. This information spread instantly through the human resistance network. Within days, every human fighter knew the new weaknesses. Within weeks, those weaknesses were being exploited in battles across the solar system. The Imperial forces found themselves fighting an enemy that evolved faster than they could adapt. Tactics that worked against humans in January were completely useless by March. Weapons that had been effective in the first battles became obsolete, as humans developed countermeasures. For the first time in galactic history, a primitive species was out-innovating the Empire itself. The Imperial supply ship, Eternal Bounty, cruised through the asteroid belt, its cargo holds filled with weapons and medical supplies for the occupation forces on Earth. Captain Vexmore felt completely safe. His ship was surrounded by 6 escort fighters, and their route took them through empty space where no human could possibly hide. Then his ship simply vanished from Imperial sensors. Commander Wu Jin watched from his hidden position inside a hollowed-out asteroid, his modified cloaking device, keeping his small fleet invisible. 6 months ago, he had been a submarine captain in the Korean Navy, hunting enemy ships beneath Earth's oceans. Now he used those same skills to hunt Imperial vessels in the darkness of space. Target acquired, Wu Jin whispered into his communicator. All units, move to attack positions. The cloaking technology they used was stolen from a destroyed Imperial scout ship. But Wu Jin's engineers had made crucial improvements. Where the original alien cloak created a shimmering distortion that trained eyes could spot, the human version bent light perfectly around their ships. They had become true ghosts in space. Wu Jin's attack began without warning. One moment the Imperial convoy was cruising peacefully through the asteroid field. The next moment, 3 escort fighters exploded simultaneously as invisible human ships opened fire at point-blank range. The supply ship's captain desperately tried to call for help, but human jammers had already cut off all communications. Surgical strike, Wu Jin ordered. Target the engines and weapons, leave the cargo holds intact. This wasn't the desperate kamikaze fighting of the early war. This was calculated, professional hunting. Wu Jin's raiders disabled the Imperial ship's defenses with precise shots, then vanished back into the asteroid field before reinforcements could arrive. By the time Imperial rescue ships reached the location, they found only empty space and floating debris. The stolen cargo would be transported to hidden human bases, where engineers would reverse engineer every piece of Imperial technology. But, more importantly, the psychological effect on Imperial forces was devastating. Their supply lines, once completely secure, had become hunting grounds. Captain Da-un led another pack of human raiders from her base, hidden inside a gas giant's rings. She had been a fighter pilot during the first Imperial attacks on Earth, and she knew Imperial ship designs better than most Imperial engineers. Every weakness, every blind spot, every design flaw, she had memorized them all during months of desperate combat. Remember, Da-un told her squadron before their latest hunt, Imperial command ships always position themselves behind their escorts. Their rear shields are 30% weaker because they never expect attacks from that direction. Her ships used a tactic she called Phantom Strike, approaching the target while cloaked, then decloaking for just seconds to deliver devastating attacks before vanishing again. Imperial sensors would detect weapons fire, but by the time they turned to respond, the human ships were already gone. Admiral Kethmore studied the latest casualty reports with growing anxiety. In just 2 weeks, the humans had destroyed or crippled 47 Imperial ships. They weren't fighting randomly anymore, they were hunting with deadly intelligence. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported nervously, "the humans seem to know our patrol routes, our supply schedules, even our communication codes. They're striking at our weakest points with perfect timing." Kethmore realized with cold dread that the war had fundamentally changed. The Empire was no longer hunting primitive rebels. They were being stalked by apex predators who had learned to turn Imperial technology against itself. The encrypted message arrived at Major Sung Min's hidden command center through channels that shouldn't have existed. It came from Keith Prime, a mining world deep in Imperial space, transmitted by someone using a Velthari name, Zixtal. The message was simple but shocking. Imperial Fleet Group 7 departing tomorrow. Destination, Jupiter. 23 ships. May your hunt be successful. Sung Min stared at the intelligence report in disbelief. She had been running reconnaissance operations for the human resistance, trying to predict Imperial fleet movements with limited success. Now an alien slave was voluntarily providing detailed military intelligence about enemy ship positions. "This has to be a trap," whispered her communications officer, Dr. Park Jin. "Why would an Imperial subject help us?" But the information proved accurate. Fleet Group 7 arrived at Jupiter exactly as predicted, and Colonel Ye Jin's raiders were waiting for them. The ambush was devastating. 7 Imperial ships destroyed, including a command vessel carrying vital strategic data. The humans had their first major victory in months, and it was only possible because an alien slave had decided to help them. Within weeks, similar messages began arriving from across Imperial space. The rebellion was spreading like a virus through the Empire's slave species, and somehow they were all finding ways to secretly communicate with the human resistance. On the crystal world of Shard, a being made of living mineral watched the forbidden footage of burning Imperial ships for the 100th time. The crystalline collective had been enslaved for 800 years, forced to mine rare metals for Imperial weapons. They had never resisted because resistance seemed impossible, but these humans had shown that the Empire could be hurt. The crystal, being known as Clearsong, began secretly collecting the purest metals from the deep mines, materials that could make human weapons far more powerful. Using ancient smuggling routes that the Empire had forgotten, these precious materials began appearing at hidden human weapon forges throughout the solar system. Armorer Ho Jin couldn't believe what he was holding. The metal delivered by unknown benefactors was unlike anything in Earth's periodic table. When he forged it into weapon components, the results were incredible. Human plasma rifles became twice as powerful. Ship armor became nearly indestructible. Energy shields lasted 3 times longer. "Where is this coming from?" Ho Jin asked his supply coordinator. "We don't know," came the reply. "Anonymous deliveries. Someone is risking their life to help us, and we don't even know who." The most surprising allies came from the Harmony Singers, a species of peaceful telepaths who had refused to fight for over a millennium. They communicated through complex songs that traveled faster than Imperial communications, and they had always used their abilities for meditation and art. Now they were using their gift for war. Colonel Ye Jin was planning another raid when her communication system suddenly filled with beautiful, haunting music. As her translator worked to decode the melody, she realized it contained detailed information about Imperial fleet positions, defensive weaknesses, and patrol schedules. The pacifist Harmony Singers had become spies for the human resistance. "This is impossible," reported Imperial Intelligence Officer Kavron to his superiors. 17 different species are somehow coordinating with the human rebels. Species that have never worked together, species that don't even share compatible technology, are all supporting human operations. For the first time in galactic history, the Empire faced not just one rebellious species, but a coordinated uprising inspired by human defiance. The humans had done something no conqueror had ever achieved. They had united the galaxy's enslaved peoples against their oppressors. The Imperial High Command gathered in their crystal palace on the capital world of Zenith Prime, overlooking a city that had known only peace for 1,000 years. Fleet Admiral Morthak studied the holographic display showing their forces throughout the galaxy. 2/3 of the Empire's mighty armada, over 15,000 warships, now bore the designation Operation Human Cleansing. "This ends now," Morthak declared to the assembled commanders. "No primitive species has ever required more than a single battle group to subdue. We're committing enough firepower to glass 100 worlds." What the Imperial leadership didn't understand was that they were no longer fighting the same species that had desperately launched nuclear missiles from Earth's surface 2 years ago. The humans had evolved into something the galaxy had never seen before. General Mi Young stood in the command center of her flagship, a vessel that perfectly represented humanity's transformation. The ship's hull was forged from alien metals, its weapons were hybrid human Imperial designs, and its crew consisted of veterans who had survived impossible battles. Mi Young herself had been a logistics officer when the war began. Now she commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. "Intelligence reports confirmed," her aide announced. "Imperial Fleet Armada 7 is approaching the Vega system with 300 ships. They expect to find a human mining operation." Mi Young smiled grimly. "What they'll find is the Vega trap." The humans had spent months preparing for this moment. They had evacuated their mining facilities and replaced them with automated weapon platforms hidden inside asteroids. When the Imperial fleet arrived expecting easy victory, they would face a carefully planned ambush involving forces from 5 different star systems. Admiral Ji-hun commanded the human forces in the Centauri sector, where Imperial strategists believed they were conducting a simple cleanup operation against scattered refugees. Instead, Ji-hun had spent 18 months building a network of hidden bases throughout the region. His ships appeared to be retreating, drawing Imperial forces deeper into what looked like empty space. "All units execute Ghost Protocol," Ji-hun broadcast on encrypted channels. Suddenly, the empty space around the Imperial fleet came alive with weapons fire. Human ships decloaked from behind planets and moons. Weapon platforms that had been disguised as space debris opened fire. Fighter squadrons launched from hollowed-out asteroids. The Imperial fleet found itself surrounded by an enemy that had learned to turn the entire star system into a weapon. On Zenith Prime, the reports flooding into Imperial High Command painted an impossible picture. Human forces weren't just surviving the massive Imperial offensive, they were winning. Entire Imperial battle groups were being destroyed by human tactics that evolved faster than Imperial strategy could adapt. "How many ships have we lost?" demanded Fleet Admiral Morthak. "In the last month, 2,437 vessels destroyed or missing," came the trembling reply. "The humans aren't fighting defensively anymore, sir. They're conducting coordinated offensives across 17 different star systems simultaneously." The truth was becoming clear to Imperial leadership. They had underestimated not just human military capability, but human nature itself. Where other species broke under the pressure of overwhelming odds, humans seemed to thrive on impossible challenges. Each defeat made them stronger. Each loss taught them new lessons. General Mi Young's forces had just destroyed an entire Imperial armada at Vega. Admiral Ji-hun had turned the Centauri sector into a graveyard of Imperial ships. Across the galaxy, human commanders who had learned warfare through necessity were outfighting Imperial veterans with centuries of experience. The Empire's certainty was crumbling into galactic nightmare. The Imperial communication array on Nexus station broadcast its final message into the void of space. Captain Thelvar, one of the few surviving Imperial commanders, sat alone in his damaged bridge as human ships patrolled the space around his crippled vessel. His once mighty fleet of 200 ships had been reduced to 12 broken hulks. In just 6 hours of combat against Captain Hyun Woo's strike force, "To all Imperial forces, to all member species of the Galactic Empire," Thelvar spoke into his recorder, his voice hollow with defeat. "This is Captain Thelvar of the 47th Imperial Fleet. I am transmitting this warning on all frequencies because someone needs to understand what we're truly facing." Across the galaxy, similar messages were being broadcast from the remnants of what had once been the most powerful military force in known space. On the burning wreckage of command ships, in hidden bunkers on conquered worlds, from escape pods drifting through empty space, surviving Imperial officers were all sending the same desperate warning. Commander Su Min's forces had just finished their assault on the Rigel shipyards, humanity's most audacious attack yet. She had led 300 human ships deep into Imperial space and destroyed the Empire's primary fleet construction facility. The shipyards had been protected by 5,000 automated defense platforms and a garrison fleet of 800 vessels. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the shipyards were scrap metal, and Su Min's fleet was already jumping to hyperspace before Imperial reinforcements could arrive. She had lost only 30 ships in the process. "They're not just fighting us," reported Admiral Kavseth from his flagship's medical bay, receiving treatment for injuries sustained when human raiders had boarded his command vessel. "They're dismantling our entire civilization piece by piece. Every factory, every shipyard, every strategic resource, they know exactly where to hit us where it hurts most." The truth was spreading through what remained of Imperial space. The humans weren't content with simply winning battles. They were systematically destroying the Empire's ability to make war. They had learned the locations of secret weapons facilities, hidden supply depots, and classified research stations. Somehow they seemed to know Imperial strategy better than Imperial strategists. Captain Thelvar continued his desperate broadcast. They don't fight like any species we've encountered. They learn from every engagement, adapt to every tactic, and they never forget an injury. We destroyed their cities, so they destroyed our fleets. We threatened their people, so they've turned our own subjects against us. We thought we were teaching them fear, but we only taught them how to hurt us. The warning was being repeated in hundreds of languages as it spread through galactic communication networks. Former Imperial allies were receiving the same message. From multiple sources, the humans could not be stopped, could not be reasoned with, and would not forgive. To any species considering contact with humanity, Thelvar's final message concluded, "Learn from our mistakes." These beings possess something we never understood. They grow stronger under pressure, more dangerous when threatened, and more determined with each loss. If you encounter humans, do not threaten them. Do not challenge them. Do not underestimate them. Our only advice to anyone who would face humanity in war is simple. Run. Run as far and as fast as you can, and pray to whatever gods you believe, in that they do not decide to follow you. The transmission ended, and across the galaxy a new age of fear began.